Do you keep getting triggered to feel angry, upset or frustrated, but you don't know why and how to stop it? In this video, we're going to be sharing how to pinpoint the cause of what's triggering you and what you can do about it. Hi guys, welcome to our channel. I'm Yasmin
and I'm Nadia.
If you haven't subscribed yet, hit the subscribe button below and the bell so you're notified every time we post a video on how to transform your life from unfulfilled and stressed to joyful and balanced. So many years ago, we used to be triggered all the time. We couldn't even listen to sad music or anything emotional. We couldn't talk about the past, or we couldn't talk about emotional things because it would cause so much emotional disruption. However, we learned how to heal this. We learned to get to the root cause of what was causing this. We healed it, and we very rarely get triggered now. We're very much in a place of peace and balance. And today we're going to share with you exactly how we did that. So we're going to be giving you a step-by-step guide to follow to manage your triggers. And the first step is to identify your usual triggers and write them down. The first thing we want you to do is recall and write down when you're usually triggered and how you normally feel and respond once you're triggered. So what this does is it makes it clear in your mind when you're usually triggered. So the next time you're in a similar situation or you're around that person that usually triggers you, you're more prepared and aware, so you have more control over that moment. So an example of something you could write is, when I make a mistake at work, I'm triggered to cry or feel overwhelmed. Now, when you do this step, we really want you to have maximum self-compassion and acceptance, because at the end of the day, we're all human and we're all going to be triggered or act disproportionately to circumstances every now and then. So don't judge yourself when you're doing this step. The second step is to do shadow work to understand your triggers and learn your wounds. So the next step is to dive a little bit deeper into understanding why it is that you're getting triggered at these points. It's really important to understand that when something happens and we act really emotionally or disproportionately, i.e. we get triggered, it's because of our previous programming, associations and traumas. So what we mean by this is when someone upsets or annoys us, even if they've done something really upsetting or annoying, it's very rarely because of them that we are triggered. And Eckhart Tolle says something that refers to this in one of his books. He says that we are never usually upset for the reason we think. So it's not because of that person that we are usually triggered. What happens is our minds store negative emotions and experiences, and when we are triggered, our minds have brought to the surface some of those emotions and experiences which has been related in some way to the present moment. So the mind wants to keep you safe, and so it does this as a sort of self-protection mechanism. It reminds you of the previous feelings and emotions and relates them to the present moment so that they don't occur again, so the negative emotions and feelings don't occur again. And sometimes it doesn't even remember, the brain doesn't remember the negative experiences or the memory, but it remembers the feeling, and then it gets triggered in that present moment again to remind you, to keep you safe. Let's explain this by way of example. So if we go back to the example of the person at work that when they make a mistake, they feel triggered to cry or feel overwhelmed. So as a complete example, it could be that in the past they've made a mistake and they've got into trouble or they've got fired. So in the present moment, they may have made a mistake, and it's even a small mistake, but the mind reminds them of when they last made that mistake and they got fired. So then it feels triggered to cry and feel overwhelmed because it's scared of being fired again. So that's just a very surface level example to show you the link between how the mind relates the past to the present, but usually it's a lot deeper than this. So the real truth behind that example could be that the person makes a mistake and it triggers them to feel unworthy, and that's what makes them cry and feel overwhelmed, because perhaps there was something in their childhood that made them feel that they weren't good enough and that made them feel they weren't worthy, and in that moment where they made a mistake, it reminded them that they don't feel worthy. And the truth of it is that a lot of our triggers do relate to our childhood. They relate to our childhood traumas and things that haven't been healed, beliefs that are holding us back. So that's why we always recommend shadow work, to go into the inner child, to see what we're holding still from our childhood, what beliefs and traumas we're holding, so we can heal them and we can move on and create a new future for ourselves and not keep on repeating the cycle of the past. So we do have a video all about shadow work, but we're going to explain to you what you need to do to really start understanding your triggers and how you can use shadow work. So the first thing we want you to do is really come from a place where you feel very grounded, self-compassionate and self-accepting. And so it might be really helpful for you to get into a meditative state, because what we're going to be doing is trying trying to get to the root cause of what is causing those triggers and why they're coming up. Without awareness, you cannot change or control how you're responding and how you're being triggered. So bring up your list of what triggers you, and we want you to just look at your list and look at the way you felt. And while you're doing this, still stay in the present moment. Notice that you're just observing and you're not experiencing this right now. And while you're looking at your list on what triggered you and how you felt, we want you to ask yourself some questions. So ask yourself, how did this situation make me feel? Where do I feel this in my body? What other similar situations have I experienced where I was triggered in this way? What memories do I have around the way I feel when I'm triggered by this situation or person? What story am I telling myself around this trigger and the way that I feel? So once you've done that, that takes us on to the third step. So step 3 is to plan how you want to react and feel. So now that you've done step 2 and you've answered some of the questions in the shadow work, you should now have learned a little bit more about your history and your past experiences behind your triggers. So now you've done that, you want to start changing that old identity or old story. So in other words, you want to change the old patterns of behavior when you get triggered. So you should have hopefully also realized that the cause of your triggers is not your outside circumstances or situations or other people, it's what's going on internally and the beliefs that you're holding. So you should know now or realize that you're more in control than you think. And now that you realize that you are in control, you want to create and visualize an alternative way that you want to feel and respond after your usual trigger. So visualize and write down now a new way to respond and feel to the thing that would usually trigger you. Actually visualize yourself in that situation, acting and responding in that new way you want to respond. This will create a new pathway in your mind, and your mind will now have a new option and avenue to respond in that situation. And you want to visualize this new outcome or this new way of responding as much as possible, because this old habit of how you used to respond is so embedded in your mind, so it's going to be very difficult to change just overnight. It will take practice, but just remind yourself of the new way you want to respond as much as possible over and over again until it really sinks in. A helpful tip that I want to add here is to have an excuse ready for certain or specific situations where you would usually get triggered. For example, if you have a friend or someone that every time you speak to them they bring up a certain situation or conversation that triggers you, have an excuse ready so you can remove yourself from that situation to avoid the negative effects of being triggered. For example, if you're on the phone to that friend and they're about to start the conversation, you could have ready the excuse that, you know, you could say, I've got a headache, do you mind if we continue this conversation later? Because that gives you time to cool down and be present before you react and become triggered. Yeah, and then you have an exit strategy in place so you won't feel so overwhelmed and anxious about actually being triggered. Comment below if you have your own exit strategy, or if you have an example of an excuse you would use if you were going to be triggered. The fourth step is to practice presence. So our final step is to apply presence, not only to the moment where you are actually triggered, but to each step of this process and to just your life in general. Presence is really the key here, because when we become more present, we have a greater level of self-awareness, which means that we have greater level of control over ourselves and we are aware of what we are thinking and feeling in the moment. What happens when you do this is you become an observer, which means that you can be having a conversation with someone and you can almost zoom out and see what's going on in the conversation from a distance, because you're aware of what's going on in your mind and your body and your emotions and your feeling whilst you're having that conversation. So when you're present in that moment and you're aware of all these things, you have greater control of how you react to certain situations, which means you have greater control of allowing yourself to be triggered or not allowing yourself to be triggered. And what you can do is you can choose to remember how you visualize you want to react instead of just reacting on autopilot. So it's really important to be present, to start to create that new reality for yourself, start to create that new response for yourself in the moments where you would normally get triggered. So make presence your main goal if you really want to start controlling your emotions, your feelings and your reactions. If you're someone who's looking to dive deeper into your triggers and find the cause, we have a free masterclass for you which is linked in the description below called Burnout to Balance, which covers this topic in more depth. So check the link out below. Also, be sure to check out our previous video all about shadows and shadow work, which we'll also link down below. That's it for today, guys. We hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please like, share, subscribe and comment. And until next time, thanks for watching. Bye.